Sarah Michelle Gellar recently said that some of the criticisms leveled against women-led franchises are backward thinking. I don't think this is 100% without merit, but I also think there is room for criticism. First of all, Sarah Michelle Gellar was Buffy the Vampire Slayer, a name still respected in nerd culture as a cool story, fun. Many of the nerds that are Generation X still remember the series fondly. And it definitely had its woke moments. Willow coming out. There was an episode that was discussing witch hunting. There were times when where one of Witch's girlfriends was kicked out of a witch group because they were actually trying to practice spells in a world where that worked, even if it was hidden. I do think there's a couple of things going on that are worth saying. One is, it's a different time. We're in a divided area right now, and so people are picking their sides. The reality is, Sarah Michelle Gellar is an actress. Her people are the actors, the entertainment industry. So she's going to be sympathetic to that group of people. So like many fans can be at times, she's going to downplay or ignore certain flaws in her home community and see criticisms of those community as personal, as either maybe friends of hers, people that remind her of themselves. But I also think we're in a situation where sometimes the first shot of a battle isn't even shot by some random guy on the internet, on some fan forum, or some YouTube channel. Here's a perfect example. J.J. Abrams said Star Wars is for girls now. Take that statement and let's add to several of the problems that were written about Rey's character. She was figuring out how to do things with the Force. It seemed like she might not even know the Force can do in the first movie. She did a Jedi mind trick in the first movie, and I don't think there was even enough time, if you count in off-screen times, for her to learn that from Maz. So, and then at the very end of that trilogy, you have Anakin's voice coming over the Force saying, "Be the chosen one, I could not." Which was sort of dismissing the entire first 6 movies. Especially Luke's plight in learning the Force through 2 teachers and at least like a year or 2. And she just kind of pulled it out of nowhere. Now, this is quite common. This is common in David and Goliath stories, but usually there's a Mr. Miyagi to get them to where they need to be. There's usually somebody's not learning boxing on their own and taking on the champion by the end of the film. We usually see them working on specific techniques that they will later use in that fight. So both the commentary by J.J. Abrams outside of the film and some of the decisions made during the film led it to some legitimate criticism. And then you get movies like Prey. I love Prey. I thought it was really well done. The fact that she figured out the whole axe thing, she had skills with the axe, she was trying to adapt, She was adapting a new skill, taking skills she already knew, and we saw her develop this skill set. Now, both have been accused of being a Mary Sue at times, but the hero of the story gets to be better at stuff than other people in the story. And while Star Wars didn't even have that many sexist aspects to it, nobody was saying, you're a girl, you can't be a Jedi. That was in Prey, but she also kind of proved him right a couple of times. That she had many of the skills, but she wasn't there yet, and she had to rise to the challenge to win this fight. Now, in a different franchise, by the way, Rey, figuring out these powers on her own, especially if they're relatively rare, she's a chosen one, and only she would have these powers, and a little bit of guidance can get her a lot farther. May have worked better, but we had somebody to compare by that people liked. Luke. Prey, she developed a skill. She realized the limitations of her axe. She tried to improve on that. So she was figuring things out. We were seeing her we were seeing her develop skills in a similar way to montages and flashbacks. Maybe a little bit faster than normal, but that's action hero stories. And I think the same can be said for the Captain Marvel film. Brie Larson talked a lot. Brie Larson, it sounds like she may be deciding that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not for her because of the backlash from the fans. But I also think she's talked a lot of smack. And when you put her comments on who she thinks should be critics for certain movies just because of who stars in those movies, and some of the other ways she treated people, it comes off brash. Now, to be fair, you put a bunch of these selected moments together, it maybe come off worse than it was actually intended. But they also written her. I also think her character was written in a way that if she had a Tony Stark figuring out that his weapons were being used against American soldiers, against innocent people, or when he realized the lives lost because he created Ultron, when Thor learned that, hey, humans aren't without value in the first Thor movie, or being arrogant and not taking the shot against Thanos in Infinity War. These types of moments of arrogance, of pride, I don't think she had that. In fact, at the end of the movie, she blasts a guy that was no threat to her across the room, and while he's still breathing, looks at the camera and says, I have nothing to prove to you. That movie felt like the character moment, the character development was not up to par to make up for the fact that the physical threat wasn't there either as an action movie. So these, I think, are legitimate criticisms. Prey, back to Prey, the physical threat was there. She had character development. She also had more than just the singular threat. So she had other things she had to overcome, including herself. So that movie, I think, has gotten unfair criticism. Captain Marvel and the Star Wars, I think those criticisms are fair. And you may disagree with them, but that's the cool thing about fans. We can actually have that discussion and have that debate. One person who I'd like to give a shout out that I think actually is doing a really good job about representing her film is Michelle Rodriguez in Dungeons and Dragons. She's a barbarian. She's a heavy lifter. She's a physical threat in that ensemble cast. And while you have one of the girls from Stranger Things, I think Michelle Rodriguez is probably the bigger name, even though she's second billing to Chris Pine. She came out. She established her credit as a D&D nerd. She told it, and she even was humble enough to say, I'm no Vin Diesel. And I don't think you have to go that far, but by doing that, she's getting the fans on her side. She isn't coming at it like she needs to come into our space and tell us how to decorate. So I think she's going to get a lot more sympathy from the fans, even if many of the things that people would criticize other films for, she does. So part of the issue is, when it comes to tribalism, is sometimes it blinds you to the flaws of your own group. But sometimes when people come after somebody that may have crossed the line, you get caught in the crossfire. You may find yourself as collateral damage in the fight, so you have to join the side, and it ain't going to be the side that just destroyed your home.